All right, good evening. Glad you could be with us here again as we have a time of Bible talk. And of course, tonight we're just focusing once again on some testimonies. And as you see beside me here, I've got 4 individuals that I'll introduce in just a moment. And we'll hear some of those testimonies in that way. And of course, I'll give you just a few moments to get on tonight. And we'll make sure that we got a good sound check. And we've already got that, so we're good to go. And as we think about testimonies tonight, you know, what a blessing it is to know the Lord Jesus Christ. To know that He has done something in our life that no person, no thing, no event could ever do for us what Jesus Christ does. And tonight, we're going to hear those testimonies in that way. Now, once in a while, I do hear some testimonies that I know a little bit about, but the interesting thing here tonight is that I don't know these folks' testimony, so we're going to have a good time at it. And of course, I know a little bit. I know them, and I know their life and their walk with the Lord. But tonight we're going to hear some interesting stories. And of course, you'll see one of us is pregnant, and it's not this guy. But it is his wife right next to him, and so we'll hear their testimonies that way. And of course, you'll see we have a group of young people, and in just a minute I'm going to ask all their ages so you can exactly see how young they are. And of course, I'm the old guy here tonight, and I'm just going to have a lot of fun as I turn around and welcome you, and then I'm going to turn around and we're just going to have a time of fellowship around the table here tonight, and hopefully you enjoy it. Feel free, if you do have some questions, my wife is in the background and she is monitoring things. So if you have a question for any of these guys, please feel free to just to write that up on the screen and she'll get that to me. And as we have time, we'll deal with that. And so with that in mind, I'm just going to turn around, say goodnight to you, and I'm going to turn around and have fellowship with these guys. So enjoy your time here with us tonight. All right. Well, there, we got that out of the way. And so here I am with you guys, and what a blessing. We're just starting out with ages. Forget the names. Okay, start us out.
28. 22.
I think I'm 24.
You think? That is very fitting for you tonight. All right.
23.
Okay, so we're in our 20s. You're the old gal here tonight.
I am.
All right.
You're not going to get your age.
Oh, well, I'm not young, so I can't, but yeah. So anyway, all right. So yeah, I just turned 57. So I'm young in the bracket of the old people. How do you like that?
I'm old in the bracket of the young people.
Hey, there we go. But you're under the 30 mark, so life for me changed when I was 30.
Yeah.
So now Jessica, 28 years old, and glad to have you with us tonight. Really looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us. Who's this gal next to you?
My sister.
All right.
Hannah.
I can say her name. This is my sister. I don't know her name, but you know. And so good to have you with us tonight, Hannah. And of course, next to you is Jesse and his wife. Introduce your wife for us.
This is my wife, Rebecca.
I was wondering how you're going to introduce her. You know, I've heard you called so many different names, all of them good. But I was wondering, what's the husband called? Okay, so Rebecca, not Becca. What do most people call you?
Becca.
Most people call you
Beck. Sure.
Okay, so you didn't want to say Beck tonight, but okay.
Well, we have enough time tonight.
Yeah. All right, well, there you go. Well, you know, it's been a blessing. Of course, you know, I've known you for quite a number of years. Didn't know you exactly when you were real young, but I knew when you were born. That is, I knew around the time and the events. Of course, we've interviewed your brothers and one of your sisters, and of course, how many are there?
Enough.
Yeah,
There's 9.
There are plenty. Nine total.
No,
In the family, so 9 plus yourself, so 10 in the whole family. All right, we may eventually get around to them, although I have had the cold shoulder to some of your siblings, so we'll try to work on them a little bit. But in the midst of it, just a real blessing to know all of you. And as I think about I think about all of you in that way, your testimony, your desire for the Lord. And unbeknown to you, I do watch you. That could be creepy, couldn't it? Yeah, there you go.
Watch
Okay,
where I
it's
go more
time-
often.
It's time to go. Okay. So, all right. Well, we're going to start with the creepiness then. So, Anna, let's start with you because as we kind of rearranged a few things so you could be here tonight because you are a traveling woman.
Yes.
And you spent some time down in Texas, and you were in Florida, and all over the place. Of course, you guys tried to travel a little bit, and you got stopped because of COVID, and the whole 9 yards. We'll get into that here in just a few moments. That was a tragedy, really. And here I am smiling, but it's this is part of what happens when you know the Lord. You just kind of take things in stride in that way. So, but we're just going to dive right in. Really, just want you to just start out giving your testimony as far as when you think about your testimony. When did the Lord really start working? What was going on? At that time the Lord started. Now, before you start. I know you're antsy. But I have to say, we've had some young people on the program, probably, I want to say at least 3, that when they gave their testimony, your name came up.
Oh boy.
And they're like, it was Hannah and her testimony and her influence and what she said and what she did, and they were so grateful to the Lord for you. And so, anyway, Hannah,
Okay.
go right ahead.
All right. So yeah, I would say the Lord started convicting me when I was 5 years old, and it was just that I was a sinner. Like I knew I was a sinner. I knew I was on my way to hell. I knew what the gospel was.
At 5 years old?
Yeah.
Now, how did you know that? I mean, where'd you
It
hear
was.
that
Oh,
from?
I was born and raised in a Christian home. So I was born on a Sunday and I went to church on Sundays. You can't get more.
All right.
More Christian than
There
that.
you go. Now you have one sister, obviously, but you have more.
Yes, I have 9 siblings total.
You have 9 as well.
So there's 10 of us. So
How many are in your family?
4 total.
Okay, so you're on the low end of the scheme of things.
yeah.
All right, so you grew up in a home, lots of kids, lots of family. Where do you fit in the home?
I'm the 3rd oldest.
Okay, all right. And so at 5 years old, you grew up in this Christian home. Obviously, somebody saying something or
Yeah.
church-wise.
Yeah, basically the pulpit and what Dan was saying most of the time. But, just at a young age, knowing that I was born a sinner, and I mean, that was just basically preached at us. So I knew it. And I knew, I believed that Jesus died on the cross for me and all those things. But it took me 10 years to really understand the gospel. But
So at 5 years old, you were sitting there thinking, hey, I'm a sinner and I know I deserve hell?
yeah.
And so for 10 years, you let that brood and...
Well, it was the Lord convicting me and me seeking Him, but couldn't find Him, and it took 10 years to find Him. And that was just because I would be convicted of my sins and what I was doing in my life, and then I would say a prayer like, Lord, save me. Like, I know I'm a sinner. I believe You died on the cross, and I just save me from this. I don't want to die and go to hell. But I never got saved. And then I would sit there, and after I was done saying those prayers, I'd be like, okay, I'm saved now. Now I have to act like I'm saved. And I can't do these things anymore because I'm saved now. And
Now, on average, those 10 years, how many times did you do that?
I lost track so much. It was so
Right.
much. I was convicted so many times, and I mean, bawling, couldn't not figure out how to get saved. And then I thought maybe it's, the words I have to say, maybe I'm saying the wrong words. And I just never understood it. I was so blind to the gospel, even though.
So did you ever at that time, when you came to church or to your parents say, hey, I got saved today?
Oh yeah, everyone heard it a lot. So,
All right.
yeah, for sure. And then I just got to the point of not telling anybody anymore, and just letting, if I was like, well, I'll see if I'm actually saved or not, and then I would sin, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, no, I'm definitely not saved, and then I'd have to get re-saved again. It was just, wow, big mess. So, yeah, and I got to the point in my life when I was 15 years old. I was just like, I went through the Gospels again to understand the Gospel. And I was like, Lord, I believe I'm a sinner. I believe you died on the cross for me. I don't know what I'm missing. And I'm done trying to find you. I'm done trying to seek you. I'm done listening to the messages. I'm done allowing you to affect me. If I go to hell, that's where I'm going. I'm done trying to find you. And that's just kind of where I left things. And the very next week, Dan was preaching, and I couldn't even tell you what he was preaching on. I wasn't listening. Keeping true to my promise. But he said this phrase, and he said, it's when you put your faith in what Christ has done on the cross, and that alone, that will save you. And it was like a light bulb went off in my brain. And I looked up and I was like, that's the gospel. And I just placed I didn't even say a prayer or nothing. It was like truly from the heart. I was like, yeah, I believe that. I'm trusting in that and that alone. And I think it was finally like the Lord was like, you're finally getting yourself out of here, Hannah. It's not about you. It's about me and what Christ has done for you. And it's not what you can do. You can't say a prayer to save you. It's not you. It's fully Christ.
So at this time, I take it you're 15 years old.
Yeah.
So 15 years old, you come to a place in which you say, Lord, I'm done with you.
Mm-hmm.
Done seeking, done whatever in that way. And so you come to church that morning. What's going through your mind?
Honestly, I don't remember. Probably just hanging out with my friends.
Okay, so here I am. I'm coming again because... And why did you go to church that morning?
I was made to.
Okay.
For sure.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you're not going to get out of that so free. So you heard Pastor Dan. And by the way, Pastor Dan, of course, that's your dad. The pastor that was here for many years until, of course, he passed away here about a year ago. And so in the midst of that, so now you come and you hear this plain gospel message. And I really appreciate that because so many people say, well, I've got to walk down an aisle, I've got to pray a prayer, and this is what you kind of thought it was without maybe asking anybody for all those 10 years or getting it figured out or the Lord figuring it out for you. When you heard that message, when did this happen for you? Did you wait till after the service? Was it right when you heard it?
Right when I heard it, it was just like instant. It was like the light bulb went off. It was like I could understand the gospel. I knew it, and it was like, okay, I'm placing my faith in that. And then it was
what do you attribute that to? And when you look back on that time and the fact that you heard that, I mean,
well, I think that a couple things that go through my mind is that Satan is really deceiving us, and how we even get to Christ. That and how we have such something over our eyes where we cannot see the plain truth and then third, how much the Holy Spirit really needs to come and visit you to get saved.
It really is a blessing. I was thinking of, as you were saying that, John 6:44, where he says, no man comes to the Father except he draws him. And certainly the Lord was really working in grace in your own life that way. What a blessing. I'm going to come back to you in a couple of minutes. We're going to come over to your sister and bring us back. Where do you fit into this whole mix?
Well, her dad is different than my dad, so
Okay, so you're half sisters.
Yeah, we are half sisters.
Okay.
You full sisters too.
Half sisters, full sisters. Yeah. I've got a plethora of those in my life too.
We're sisters.
All right. You didn't grow up in the same home, I take it, or you did?
We did. So my mom got divorced from my dad when I was 4 or 5. It was somewhere in there, and she got married to Chad about a year later. So I was either 4 or 5. I don't remember. So I grew up. From what I can remember, I don't remember anything before that. So all I ever remember is Chad as my father and being raised in that household. But what came with that was you have 2 different fathers. Who's your father? It's confusing, especially as a young child.
We'll get together and talk about that.
Yeah. So that's actually one of the biggest things that actually led me to the Lord, was not having that, or feeling like I have that, I should say. Growing up, I came to church every Sunday. We were dragged no matter what. Like, it was, especially when you're younger, it's like, these are your friends. You know, you're a homeschool. These are who you hang out with. So, you know, most times you're like, oh, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends, you know, whatever. And going to church was more of a social event versus like, you're here to hear the gospel, you're here to get fed, you're here to, you know. So that's what it ended up being for a long time. And yeah, I did learn a lot, and I did hear the gospel numerous times, couldn't count how many. I always remember being convicted at a young age, probably like 7 to, I got saved, I think it was like when I was 17. I know the date, but I don't know how old I was.
Sure.
I remember the exact moment, don't know the date. But I remember getting convicted. Mr. Stanley would go through Proverbs, and that was just, every single verse was a different conviction, and every single Wednesday night it would be a different conviction, because, you know, you're a sinner, oh man, I'm a sinner, I know I am. And I heard it from my family. My mom says, you're not the black sheep, you just think you are, but I'm the black sheep. So I had a habitual time of, I was a habitual liar, pathological. I didn't know what was right and what was wrong half the time.
Now, where do you fit in the family?
I'm the second oldest.
I just want to see if you're lying about that.
So it was really bad. It got to the point where, like, I was proud of the fact if I could deceive Chad into thinking that I was saying the truth. And it was something that I was always convicted of, and I knew it was a sin, and I was like, this is something that I struggle with, and I know that, why can't I just tell the truth? But I felt like I would get in trouble if I told the truth. And it was just a habitual circle. And also struggling still with, you know, who is my father? Who am I to go to, and everything. I struggled with this for years and years, and just inner turmoil between all of it. And I mean, I had fear of death to a certain point. I remember one time Chris Paulson came and he did a sermon on demons, and I was so, like, to this day I remember that sermon, and just completely convicted. And throughout those years, I would convict, like, say, oh, I would pray a prayer, say, oh yeah, I got saved. Sometimes I would say I got saved just to get out of trouble. Like, I would be like, oh, I got saved, and okay, no spankings for you. Like, so it was a habitual thing, and, like, to some extent, like her, like, I was seeking, but I didn't know what I was seeking. I knew I wanted to get saved. I knew that this was the right thing to do, but I didn't know how to. I didn't understand it fully. And, you know, growing up, I got a better clear of, you know, it's only through Christ that you're going to get saved. It's only through His grace that you're going to be saved. But I still didn't fully, like, I didn't want to get saved at that point. I was like, no, I want to sin some. Like, I want to go grow up, and I want to sin, and I want to be okay with that. And
so you purposely made a choice saying, hey,
yeah,
I don't want to be saved.
For a while, yeah. For a few years, I would say, nope, I have plenty of time. I'm not going to die today. I have plenty of time. You know, I would hear other testimonies of how they got saved at a much later age, and I was like, oh, I'll do that. I'll get saved, but I'll wait. It just ended up being a conviction on me, and, like, with the turmoil with the family and everything, I just remember sitting in my mom had this office, and we were sitting there, and she was ironing something. I forget what she was ironing, but she was ironing something, and she was sitting there, and we were talking, and I'm just like, I don't understand, Mom. Like, I want a father. Like, I want that figure, and I prayed that. She's like, why don't you turn to the Lord? Like, He is your heavenly Father. And I just remember at that point, like, everything clicked for me, that it's only through Him that we're going to have peace. It's only through Him that we're going to have love. Literally everything is through Him. And I just accepted Him in my heart, and I knew that, like, all of the other things, the lying was easy for me to quit doing. And I'm like, I dealt with it for so long because I was like, I'm not even lying, and I still think I'm lying, but I'm just like, nope, this is the right thing, and like things just became so much easier as far as not wanting to sin.
So when you talked to your mom, and she kind of laid this out, and what a beautiful picture, that He is our Father and that He wants to be, in that way. And so when she told you that, so what happened at that point? Was it right then? Was it?
Yeah,
afterwards,
she had to keep doing stuff. She left the room, and I sat there for a little bit, and I don't remember what I prayed, but I remember praying to Him and accepting Him into my heart,
Sure.
and just like pouring my heart to Him and saying, I love you, thank you, and but yeah, it was that at that point.
So now in subsequent days, you're thinking back and you're thinking, I refused to get saved.
Mhm.
So what was going through your mind when you thought back on that time, whatever that short period of time was, where you're saying, I don't want to be saved?
I looked at it as like, once you get saved, you can't sin, and it's different. You don't want to sin. It's completely different, but it's in my mind back then. It was, I can't sin once I get saved, so therefore I'm not going to get saved. So
All right, that's a really good thought. I mean, in the midst of it, how many times people think. In fact, I remember when I was in high school and trying to witness to a few kids, and they were like, "Well, we don't want to be a Christian. They don't have any fun." And that was a big thing,
Yeah.
at the time. It's like the perception of it. So, all right, we're going to come back to you in a few minutes here. We're going to scoot across the table. We're going to go to this young lady over here who happens to be, it looks like, are you pregnant?
A little bit.
We were talking earlier about how we don't want to ask anybody if they're pregnant. I mean, we've all gotten in trouble asking somebody if they're pregnant. And but you obviously are. We know that. So how far along are you?
I think it's like 7 months now.
7 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're due. Let's see. So
In
this
May,
is
so like-
March, April, May. Okay.
2.5 months left.
March, April. Okay. Wow. All right. Well, there we go. Congratulations on that. And this is your first one, I take it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
you don't have any hidden ones or anything, right? No. He's not going to answer. He's like, don't even go there. Going to get myself in trouble. That's what's going to happen. All right. So, all right, Becca, tell us your story. Where did things begin for you?
I mean, I grew up in when I was young, a church going family, but not a sound doctrine. So actually really Pentecostal, very prosperity gospel. So I remember knowing right and wrong, knowing I was a sinner. I don't remember when I knew that. I just grew up knowing that. But definitely never had a clear, I don't think I actually heard a true gospel message till I was probably around 10, 11 years old. So grew up going to those churches, and of course, my parents were very involved. So, I said a prayer when I was 5 and thought I was okay. And anytime I would sin, though, I didn't understand, because I didn't ever hear the gospel, that the blood of Jesus would cover that if you were saved.
So when you're 5 years old, what are you praying as a 5-year-old?
Oh, you're praying whatever your Sunday school teacher is having you repeat back to them.
Okay. These guys are laughing.
You're
Like,
saying-
we understand that. We get that.
So, I said one of those sort of prayers, and I'd, go on. I would pray here and there, and, we did Bible time as a family, and anytime I would mess up, those a lot like what you said of, I got to re-accept the Lord into my heart because I just messed up. So the entire works mentality of, I have to be to this level, and then the Lord will accept me. So I did that all growing up, and it was just the most frustrating thing, because it's I wanted to please the Lord, but never heard the gospel, didn't understand what that actually looked like, so would just constantly be in this cycle of sinning and then re-accepting the Lord.
Let me ask you a question. The other night during our prayer meeting, there was a young child that came and said, "Would you pray for me? I want to stop sinning." What did anything go through your mind when they said that? I mean, what goes through your mind when you say? I mean, really, when you think about this, I mean, here's this. I don't know. She's 6, 7 years old, something like that, and it's I just pray for me. I want to stop sinning. I mean, what goes through your mind when you're thinking about that?
I think for me, like, thinking about that, it's like, I would tend to think there is more of a conviction of actually understanding your sin, strictly because, like, I always wanted people to think I was okay because I just was not understanding salvation. And, like, if she's confident enough to be like, okay, I'm not okay, pray for me at, like, 6 or 7 years old, I think that's fantastic.
Has anything come to your mind when you hear that?
I would want to talk to them to kind of feel out more why they're asking that, if they actually understand the gospel or not first.
So when you were young, were you thinking, hey, I just want to stop sinning?
Yeah, I was like what Rebecca said there about you want to please the Lord, but you don't know how, and you have to be at a certain level to even become saved. Like, okay, I need to like stop doing this so that maybe I can be saved, type of thing. So.
Okay. All right, Becca, go ahead.
So, I think when I was about 5, the church we were in, we decided to leave just because there was a lot of, obviously my parents were starting to see some unsound things there with that. So we did like home church for a while and then went to a different church, which also just wasn't sound. Fortunately, I think the Lord really blessed me with not remembering a lot about those churches, just because hearing some of my older siblings talk about just how much they had to like work through and reteach themselves because of all the false teaching. Like, I haven't had to deal with much of that, which was a huge blessing. But then once we left that church, there was just a lot of bitterness towards churches, and I mean, how splits can go. You usually have some people shun you, and my parents were just kind of done with church for them. So we ended up, we were moving anyway to a farm, and there was a local church there, and that's probably 4 to 6 years since we had gone to a church, and we decided to go to the Baptist church there. And that's probably when I heard my first like gospel message. And I like some messages in particular with like the will of God was never even really preached in any of those churches, because obviously when you're learning about prosperity gospel, it's all about earthly things that can satisfy you the here and now. And I just remember sitting in that message, and I'm like, things were just starting to like click of like understanding who God was, having heard the gospel some, and then understanding God's will working. But we came out of that service, and I remember my parents, me and my brother were like talking, I'm like, that was like really good. Like, I've never heard a message like that. We walk out of there, and my parents are like, forget everything you just said, that's all wrong, like just still in some of that false teaching. So then I was like dealing with a lot of confusion of like, okay, I think that sounded true. Like, in my understanding of who God is.
Now, how old were you at this time?
Probably 11.
Okay.
So then I had to be like, okay, I even remember like apologizing to the Lord, like, oh, I'm sorry, I actually believe that. Like, how dare I think that? Like, my parents are telling me this is wrong. And then like I just remember meditating on that message though a lot of his will and working. And then when I was about 13 or 14.
So you never went back to that church again?
No, they were just done. Here and there, did some Bible studies with people, but there was always a reason to stop going somewhere. So didn't ever have like a consistency in like fellowship, or never really understood the importance of having a church body to gather with. So when I was like 13 or 14, my family started just like going through a really rough season. One of my parents was leaving a lot, and just nothing was steady in life. And when you're kind of in the mentality of even like turning to the Lord, but thinking you have to be to a certain level, like just feeling very to your wit's end of like, I can't do anything. And I didn't understand for quite a while that was the point. Like, I can't do anything. So it was like when I was 14, I remember we just have some pretty spots to walk down in our pasture, and I was down there and just feeling completely like I don't even know what to do. Like, I don't feel like I can do anything. I don't feel like wanted by my family. Like, this, it just was a sucky situation. And I remember being down there and just like, I mean, because I'd still read my Bible here and there. And just like some scriptures would start kind of going through my mind of even just like the Lord will never leave you or forsake you. And then just sitting there and being like, I can't do anything, and like reflecting on all those things, because I've still through all this time like understood I had sin in my life, and I understood all that. And it was like at that moment of actually understanding that it was not at all through me that I could get saved. So I don't even think I said a prayer either at that point, but it's like that's when it hit me that it's nothing I can do.
So how did you come to that realization? I mean, you're reading. Where did you hear this from?
My sister was honestly one of the best resources I had for sound teaching. Of like, she'd be like, I've been reading this book, you can pass it along, and it was usually like a Bible study, so it would work along with your Bible.
So at this point, did your sister know the Lord?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep, she would have. She was much more into also finding sound teaching than I would have been of like listening to sermons on her own. And I mean, I was 14. I wasn't.
No, she was older, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
She would have been like probably 18 around that time.
Okay.
So, she would even have at that time, you know, she had her license, tried out a few churches here and there. And so she would be the one that was like telling me things, or even like, I don't know how many times we would stay up till like midnight, 2 a.m, just like talking through things of just like understanding, or even just with like family difficulty. And then she was always really good about bringing it back to the Lord and how he can work through that. So I would say that a lot of those.
At this point, you had been to church when you were 13 or thereabouts. Had you gone back?
No, because my parents weren't going. It's not like I had a driver's
so you didn't
license.
go back. So the only resource you had was your sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're talking with her. She's talking and giving you the gospel all these years.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, how old are you at this point?
It would be 14.
So when you're 14, you're thinking through. Now go ahead and repeat what you were saying there before. You're 14, and all of a sudden the light turns on.
Yeah. So it's like at that point, I mean, I still don't have a driver's license, and it's not like I'd grown up with feeling like you need a church body. So I think the biggest change was just my desire to read and be in the Lord's Word. And
So back up for just a moment. Now you came to a place at which you said, during this time you're thinking, hey, how do I be saved? What goes on? What happened at the moment that you were converted? What was going through your mind? You said it once, but go back to that point.
Just like being completely empty, or just like completely feeling my weakness of my inability to, in this world, obviously fix problems, and then obviously for the spiritual, the Lord comes and lives in me. I don't have any means of that process. And I think just having everything in my life slowly show me that I have no part in fixing it was huge, and just understanding that on a spiritual level too.
So at that point, then you're looking to the Lord.
Yeah.
And again, I think if I remember correctly, I could rewind, but if I remember correctly, you were saying that I just came to a realization that He's the one.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, and again, we've heard this already. In fact, you were talking about this same thing. It's just like it's a person can pray and be saved, but at the same time, we don't need to pray to be saved, because that's not how we are. But it's believing on the Lord, and that's what happened with you with them. Mm-hmm. And so, all right, we're gonna come back to you. Let's go over to your husband right now. He's looking at me like, when are you gonna come to me? Come on, tell me. Come on, let's get going here. So, Jesse, so glad to have you here tonight. We've worked together. We've had some good times together. In fact, I remember when we were working over on Portland Avenue, and there your wife she wasn't your wife at the time, but I should have known you were getting married at that time, with the way you looked at her.
Yeah.
And so.
Wait, what?
I didn't know I was getting married at that time.
At any rate, Jesse, take us back to when things started happening for you. Tell us your story.
Well, I was.
But by the way, you feel like you're being
that-
surrounded here with all these gals here? Not at all?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. All right. That's good. All right. Bring us back.
Growing up, I think the biggest thing when it came to the gospel, was being around it so much, it kind of took it for granted. And we as humans just, we acclimate to whatever environment we're in. And so it became very hard for me to address the gospel on a regular basis with how many times I was hearing it. But I was born in a home that loved the Lord and was centered around going to church and serving Him week after week. And it wasn't necessarily like I had any hope of that saving me at any point, but I would sit there and say I knew the Lord up until I was 18 when I came to know the Lord, and claim the name of Christ just to pass muster. But through that time, I found myself spending a lot of time adding to the gospel whatever it is that I felt I needed to feel like I was walking with the Lord, or this person that I didn't know.
So at 18 years old when you got saved?
Yeah.
All right, so now, all this time, everybody's thinking you're saved, right? Because you... The brothers, did you ever at this point ever come out publicly, get baptized or anything like that and say, hey, I'm saved and I just want to live for the Lord? I don't know, did I?
No, I hadn't.
All right. So, okay, but as far as everybody understood, you were professing that you were. So you knew him back at that time. I take it.
Yeah, we grew up together.
She's like, oh yeah,
we
I
worked
knew him.
together. We did school together. We spent too much
I
time
don't think
together.
we received people as much as
Yeah.
All right, so you have another brother.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
For
Well,
real.
there we go. I should have asked you what his testimony was. This is fun. All right. So those 18 years. Tell us more. Well,
I think seeing different siblings come to know the Lord, that always was something that would make you stop and think and kind of help you clear your mind of whatever the devil was trying to silence when it came to gospel. And my brother Isaac and Benaiah, when they would come to know the Lord, as each person came and looked to somebody in this book that created this earth, which I had knowledge of, and I understood that to the extent I thought it through, that it made sense, that this whole earth, everything I've seen and experienced is created by somebody in this book, and everyone in this body of believers has huge interest in it. And I remember thinking about that and just pondering on that, and just how mind-boggling that was, because it's just nobody you can see, it's nobody you can talk to like we are in that sense, but yet they had such an emphasis. And I remember hearing the gospel from my brother Isaac several times, and when it was spring of when I was 18 years old, and I was downstairs playing video games at the time, and I remember him coming down and giving the gospel clearly to me and trying to just make me make a
he
decision.
just came down and said, hey, I'm going to be talking to you, so listen.
Right. And he might have started without a Bible, but ended up with a Bible by the time he tried to. And I remember grabbing the Bible after he had left and giving me the gospel. I opened it to Ephesians, and at that point I had been meditating on the gospel quite a bit and been convicted quite a bit, to the point where I was no longer trying to add anything to the gospel as far as faith goes. I was sincerely trying to see who Christ was and not adding anything to it. And I cried out to the Lord and I said, Lord, if you are reigning over this earth and you plan to come again and to bring us to yourself, I want to know you, and I want to trust you, and I want you to be Lord over my life. And I remember then seeing Scripture as Scripture, and my eyes being opened, and I was edified by Ephesians, reading through it from that point on. I had a hunger for the Word, and I remember seeing my sin, and at that time I would be a mocker or a slanderer as a way to press and avoid and run from those around me that were trying to
here you
care
are,
for me.
you're growing up, and your older brothers, because you're you're one of the younger ones, right? How far are you from the bottom?
There's 2 younger.
Okay, so here you have your older siblings coming to know the Lord,
Yeah.
and here you are playing this game. I'm saying that I am, but I'm not. What's going through your mind when you're seeing your older siblings come to the Lord, their lives changing before you?
Envy, different things of that nature. I wanted it. They had it. I didn't have it. I'd be just kind of glaringly there, and there was.
So you did have some of this feeling of emptiness, like whatever they've got, I should have, but I don't know how to get it, or that was
there.
kind of too?
And it's like I had no connection to the gospel and the word being alive in me in any way they would talk about right here. And that was true up until I was 18.
So now tell me, after you come to know the Lord, after you put your trust in Christ, what did your siblings say? What was going on? How long did it take them to know before you really come to know the Lord? Hannah, how long did it take you to know?
Not very long. It was like a different Jesse, for sure. Yeah.
Interesting. So what about your brothers and sisters? Mom and dad, anything?
I don't remember the time frame and them finding out, really.
Okay. Well, we know Hannah found out,
Yeah.
and so the others obviously did in that way. All right, Hannah, let me shift back to you here for a minute. So here you get saved. You're 15 years old. You come to know the Lord. You put your trust in Him. What happened? What happened after that? I mean,
Yeah, so I didn't really tell anybody because of my track record.
because you have 1,000 times
Yeah,
already,
no,
so
it's
now,
like,
okay.
I was just quiet about it.
I
And
probably still think I
yeah,
You cried wolf too many times.
yep,
so,
and then
okay.
yeah, so I just kind of was like, well, in time, people will know. Even though I was a believer at 15, it wasn't until I was 18 that I was like, I was down in Florida and I was sitting at our kitchen table and I was like, Anna, you're a believer. Why aren't you getting serious? And that's
You were
when
saying this to yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's when I opened up my Bible and just started reading, meditating, studying, memorizing, and just my walk started to started going after that in my walk with Christ. A relationship.
What do you think kept you during those couple of years from just going forward?
I really don't know. I couldn't really tell you, but there was a lot. But it was just more of like when I realized that it's more. I think it came to the realization that I wanted a relationship with Christ. I wanted more than just knowing, oh, yep, He's my Savior and I'm saved. And it was more turning into a relationship.
Almost kind of feels like this was all done. Now I'm settled.
Yep.
And it's just like now I can just kind of ride on my laurels for a little bit, and then came back.
To realizing wanting a relationship. Yeah.
Okay, so since you're 18 at this time, and now you got 10 years. No, not 10 years. You're not 28. You're 28.
Yeah.
So you got 4 or 5.
Well,
How old are you now?
22.
22. So you got 4 years.
Yeah.
So what's the Lord been? What's he been doing for you during those 4 years?
A lot. I mean, I've grown up a lot, and just in my walk with Him, learning to trust Him in just the tiniest things you can think of. I mean, that's something that He's really taught me. I've gone through lots of trials, as we all have.
Sure.
But and just.
What do you think? I'm thinking about some of these young people that say, "There's Hannah. Look at her. This is and she had influence on me." What was going on with them? I mean, with you towards them.
Well, I know specifically James. I forget. I had just gotten baptized. It was that day, and I looked at him and I just thought randomly, super random. Even I was like, that was random. It's like, James, are you saved? I just turned around and looked at them, and then the lady asked me, it was my turn to go up to the cash register. And so then I ordered my food, but it was just super random most of the time.
Now we don't talk a lot about baptism during this time. We usually don't have much time to do that. But how long after you got saved did you actually come out and get baptized?
I was 19, so 4 years.
Okay.
And that was reasons of not my own, but I was harping on my dad to allow me to. So.
All right. So now when you look back on it, here you're 19 and you finally get baptized. Now we know that obviously baptism doesn't save us. We know that, putting our faith and trust in Christ. But you get baptized, and aside from the idea that it's baptism, it really is a coming out. How was it a coming out for you?
Lots of tears. But yeah, no, it was good. It was good just for me to let the whole church and whoever wanted to listen. I had some family members that were there that weren't believers, just telling them what the Lord did for me. And
Sure.
yeah.
Now, the other question I was thinking about is, now your sister got saved when she was 17, right?
Yeah.
And you were 15, and you guys are 2 years apart?
Oh no,
No, we're 6 years.
6 years apart.
Oh, you're 6 years. Okay,
Yeah.
I was thinking you might have probably got saved around the same time, but that wouldn't be
No.
true. So you got saved probably about 4 years earlier or something
Yeah.
that way. All right. So, and were you guys close enough? Were you having influence on her, or you just no? That was not even in the picture. Okay. All right. So now here you are. You are. How old were you when you got 17? When you got saved? I just said that. So you're 17. So take us back to the time. Now you're 17. You come to know the Lord. You put your trust in Him. You finally settle this matter. What happened?
Well, so at the time, like I believe my parents could see a genuine change in me. When I turned
I mean,
17.
now, when you're 17 and you come to know the Lord, was there a change in you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what was going on? I mean,
One
just
of the
in general.
biggest changes is like I didn't want to sin, so the lying dissipated. Just wanting to do right by my parents, making sure that I was obeying them, and I had it wasn't a social event anymore for me to go to church. Like I wanted to go to church. I don't like reading, so I can't say that I was in the Word.
Sure, yep, I
So,
understand that.
but definitely much more desire. Like even singing was no longer like, oh, I have to sing a song. Like I enjoyed singing it, sort of thing. So it was definitely more of just a want versus a have to. And at that point, when I turned 17, I was graduating high school. I graduated a little bit early. I graduated September. And this was a few months before that. I don't know when, but it was a few months before that. And I couldn't get my driver's license when I was 15. So it was like a big time for me because I was able to get my driver's license. But at the same time, I was originally just going to go visit my actual biological dad for an extended period of time. From Thanksgiving to Christmas, I was going to stay there for about full time. It just ended up being that I stayed in Pennsylvania. So that was completely different. My dad confesses to be a believer. I question it at times. My sister and Stephen have had more conversations and they believe it's true, so I believe them. But I haven't had really conversations with them about it.
I've always told my kids, and they're starting to understand this a little bit better. It's like, I believe you, but I'm not persuaded.
Yeah. And
it's like, how can that be, Dad? And it's like, okay, so this is
Yeah.
how it is.
But no, I mean, I trust fully in them, so I trust them and I trust him because of it.
So you lived in Pennsylvania, here you are
Yeah.
with your dad, and
But it was a completely different lifestyle. It's very much more secular. It's very like, my friends ended up being not bashing on public school, but like they were public schooled. So like it was much more, oh, you hang out by yourself with no adults around. I was like, what is this? Like this is not okay. Like you have to have an
Right.
adult in the room. Definitely like culture shock
if
for
my
me.
mom only knew.
Yeah. And I think that really hindered my growth with the Lord at that point because I was like,
I could feel it as soon as you were saying
yeah,
that. So.
it definitely did. Because I was like, oh, like no, this is normal. We're just like really, really, really religious, and like this is more normal than how I grew up. And I mean, I still would choose to do the right thing because the Lord would convict me in my heart. And but I didn't have a body of believers that I would go to because my dad didn't go to church at that time. Towards the end, I lived there for 2 years. Towards the end, he started dating his now wife, and we started going to church. And so but at that time, I was like, I'm too busy. I have work. I work 2 jobs. I've always chosen to be a busy person. So
You already have the influence.
yeah. So it was just, it took a while for me to be drawn back to the Lord. Like I definitely swayed away from like knowing. I knew what was right, and I was convicted of it. It was just definitely not prevalent.
So how long did it take you to come back to that understanding and just press on for the Lord?
So I moved back to Eau Claire when I was 20. I hadn't quite turned 21 yet. So I moved back, and at the time, I started hanging out with actually younger kids that used to go to our church and don't anymore. And they had been swayed too. So I was like, no, I'm right now, like, definitely we're doing what's okay. And so I got baptized at that time because I knew that was the right thing to do, and I had not gotten baptized before that. So I got baptized at that time, and then it still took me a few years to be like, no, I need to turn away from this. I would say by the time I was like 22, or no, 20, probably around 23, my sister had asked me to move to Wausau because she moved to Wausau. And I was like she had said, at that point, our parents, my younger siblings and my mom and my dad would go to Florida for an extended period of time. I'm like, I don't got family here. Sure, and plus, I'm kind of like a pushover when it comes to my siblings. If they ask me something, I'm going to do it. So I moved back to Wausau, and seeing their influence, and then Stephen is a huge influence of why I was like, no, I need to get back on track, and I need to seek the Lord and live for Him. Not that I wasn't.
Now, Stephen is
Our brother-in-law.
okay.
Yeah, he's my sister, our oldest sister's husband.
Okay.
And he was a huge influence of like, we wouldn't talk about spiritual things, like it would just come up randomly, and he convicted me because he was like, you talk the talk, but I don't see you walk the walk very often. And I was like, you're right. Like, and I would have a conviction of like, he'd be like, you don't go to church very often. I'm like, yeah, that's because like the church you go to, a bunch of old people are there, and I want younger people. And I definitely started going to a church and finding a church, and I ended up just driving to Eau Claire almost every single Sunday because I came here, and because this is the best teaching that I found,
Sure.
and the best group of like fellowship, where you get fellowship on top of it. And most churches you go to and then you just leave, which to some point I think we all do some Sundays, but
So in a nutshell, how important is it today for young Christians to be involved with other believers?
oh, so important. I would say get involved in activities, seek out other people just to find that spiritual oneness. And like, even if you're just going to the mall or whatever it may be, if you're hanging out with, that's something that happened a few years ago, is I prayed consistently for friends that were Christians, because I didn't have friends that were Christians, and it was very frustrating for me because I would see their sin and I'd be like, I don't want to be a part of your sin. And like my one friend, I would tell her every single day, I'm like, you are a terrible person, I still love you, but you are a terrible person. Like, that's not a friend you should have, probably.
Right. It is something, I was thinking as you're talking about having peers, friends in that respect, that can be good and that can be bad, especially if they're not living for the Lord or going forward that way. I was thinking about when the Lord saved me back when I was 15 years old. And I started going to the church that your dad was pastoring in Durand at the time, and I was the youngest guy there. And the next oldest person was, guess who? Your dad. So I naturally had to take the older people to be my mentors.
Oh yeah.
And that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, simply because that's where stability was. That's where it was for me. But Becca, let's come over to you. Okay, here you're how old were you now?
14.
You were 14. And so 14 years old, you finally come to this realization that you can't do it on your own. You trust in the Lord. What happened afterwards?
I definitely did get convicted to like read in my Bible more and actually like know who the Lord is. From there, my sister would try out a few churches, and I started going with her. Even though mainly my dad just grew up hearing a lot, pastors only mentioned once in the Bible, therefore it's not biblical, and not really looking at the letters that were sent to churches and the gathering of believers. But they never were like, you can't go. So I would go with my sister, trying out a few places. I think right before I turned 17, Steph had invited us here because she had just started dating Ben, and I think they had come. We went bowling or something by our place, and she's like, well, you guys should come to church by us. And I think the first Sunday I had to like work or something. So my sister went, and she came back, and she's like, it was really good and really sound. She's like, the gospel message, because that's just not something we grew up with, and that was preached a lot here, which is good if you haven't heard it a lot to have that constantly preached over and over. She's like, so you should definitely go. So the next Sunday, I went with her, and then from there, I would have been just turning 17. I started driving to Eau Claire once a week to go to church here. And I think it was right before I moved to Eau Claire that I got baptized here, which was like a big leap of faith for me to like, in a sense, like set up how my Christian walk was going to be, because it wasn't like anything my family had. So like it was weird, because growing up, like, or not growing up around here, but like seeing everyone here growing up, and like their dad is like a huge like helping them take those steps, and like your dad was huge in my life for that. Like, be the one to sit me down and be like, okay, if you were sitting before the Lord right now, he's like, should I let you into heaven? What would you say? And like sitting down and having those conversations, and then just like, hey, so like, why aren't you taking the next step? Why aren't you getting baptized? And so like to have someone like help me recognize what was right and like do that. And then Stephanie was really good too about like, once I did get baptized, explaining what it means to be a part of a church body and like the priority of it. Because I was like, okay, I get I'm a member here now, but it's still, wouldn't have been that long that church would have been a normal thing for me. So I didn't necessarily understand that it was important for me to be invested as well as the body to be invested.
So here we are talking about baptism again, which is good. So when you got baptized, what were you thinking this was going to do for you, or anything that way? What was going through your mind?
It's just a way of you proclaiming what the Lord's done in your life.
So in your mind, this was something that you really didn't understand prior to, but then when you say, okay.
Yeah, I was baptized though before when I was 8. Like, I knew it was a step you took once you were saved. So like thinking growing up and stuff, and it was something I was convicted of when I knew I was saved, that I needed to get baptized.
So you were 8 years old, you got baptized. Were you immersed? Or
yep.
You were? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But they don't necessarily like ask for your testimony with little kids. They're always like giving you these yes and no questions, and it's like, well, you can easily answer those correctly.
Right.
So yeah,
because most people just think, hey, you're getting baptized, that means now you're a Christian.
Yeah. So that was something I was really convicted of, knowing that wasn't a proclamation of faith at that point, because I didn't believe, and so I wanted to get baptized again.
Okay, so it really was a step of faith for you, just to come out, get baptized. Mm-hmm. So this is a strange question, but when you got baptized, did you feel any different? Was there anything?
I felt different in the body of believers, I guess, of just like, I don't know if it's like they wait for that as like a permission, like, okay, now we can get close to you and like help you. So like I felt,
it's kind of like now you're a part of the family.
Yeah. Which, that might just be more of just because of how they do it here. Like, if you want to become a member, if you haven't been baptized, that's a step they want you to take. If you have, then just give your testimony. So I think like because I wanted to become a member, that's probably why I felt more of that.
Sure.
So I think that would be more of what I felt of just like, and more accountability to other believers too, because you're making that known, so you know people are gonna, they're gonna mark you as a believer.
Sure. Well, that's so important. Back in the New Testament days, when somebody got baptized, it was like they put a mark on their head, and it was like really not a mark for a good way.
Yeah.
Because they were now marks for persecution, and of course now we're just marks for the believer to come and come at us. Of course, who knows where that's going to go in America today.
Right.
But all right. So what else happened after that? So you get baptized, you join the church, and now everything's hunky dory, all's good. Fare you well.
Yeah, I mean, I moved to Eau Claire then, which was another like big step of just like, I knew I needed to be closer to the believers to actually make that not just a Sunday ritual. So I prioritized that. I moved to Eau Claire and started working, and I was working in healthcare, so you have to work every other weekend, and Dan would notice the Sundays I wasn't there, and he's like, hey, like, what's going on? I'm like, well, I mean, I have to work, I have bills, and he's like, well, can't you get a different shift? I'm like, maybe, and so I work 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. every other Sunday, and at least make the second service, and just having, again, that accountability, and just people being like, why isn't this the most important thing in your life? So,
Sure. So while you're here, you're obviously engaged in the fellowship with the church and everything. I assume that's how you met Jesse.
Stephanie tried to set my sister up with one of his brothers, so that's the first thing I ever did with Jesse. was go bowling, but we weren't supposed to get set up.
So it was unintentional?
No, because we didn't go out till like a year later, I don't think.
All right. How long have you guys been married now?
2 years.
Am I
almost.
asking you that question? Because you don't know that question. Yeah.
Not quite 2 years. I'm sorry. 2 years.
A year and a half come September, right? All right. So, all right, what a blessing. It's interesting because I remember about a year ago, both of you came into my wife's hospital room. And I distinctly remember that, not because of what we were talking about, but because I remember you both came, and it was a wonderful spirit of fellowship when you guys came just to visit. And that's never left me. And so it's just what a real blessing in that way. Just to know that here's the fellowship that you're talking about, and of course you're included in it in that way. All right, Jesse, what happened? You're 18 years old. You finally, the light clicks. You're no longer playing any more video games. Well, yeah, not quite, but anyway. So 18. You're 23 now. 24 now. So you got 6 years. What's happened in 6 years? What happened the next day? What happened the next week? What did the Lord do for you during that time? I mean, Hannah looked at you. Hannah looked there at you, and she looked at me and she said, "Yeah, he was different." What changed? What did the Lord do?
He gave me an interest in sacrificing, and he gave me interest in loving the body of believers.
When you say sacrificing, what are you talking about?
Just my time, energy, thoughts towards them, and
So sacrificing for
their benefit, or
for others in that way you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What else? What else was going on? I mean, that must have been a pretty obvious thing at the time. Let me stop you for a minute. What was obvious to you
I
about
make
it?
a really funny joke.
Sure.
There was no more lawnmowers blowing up.
There were no more what?
Lawnmowers blowing up.
I was a pyromaniac, I suppose.
There were no more lawnmowers blowing up. That is really interesting. That doesn't sound like a joke. So a pyromaniac, a prankster. How could I have not known those things? Yeah, whatever. Okay. All right. So now what else? What happened? What else was
A
going on?
lot of it was, I was enthusiastic about the fact that there was hope for a lot of people in my life, where it was like, knew they weren't necessarily strong in the Lord. And so it was like, this thing works. Come on, everybody. This thing is life. And so there was a lot of enthusiasm that way. And I remember just several times my dad giving this look of like, you need to calm down, buddy. It's different
Okay, Dad,
Saturdays. Which,
Yeah, that is kind of funny. Your dad, because your dad, of course, he was going 110 miles an hour the whole time. So,
but I remember different books like James and Ephesians obviously giving me a lot of light and direction towards different sins and things that I was dealing with at the time and that I knew now had dominion over me. It wasn't like it was every once in a while. And when I started to read those things, I was like, this is everything to me. Like, I am more than walking in this. I'm swimming in this. And that was huge. I think in James and just your motives and reading through James a lot after getting saved and why you do things, and then also just different ways you look at yourself and then ignore it. And your tongue, that was huge. Like I said, I remember reading the Gospels, and I had this verse in mind that it was Matthew 27:37, and it says that they set up over his head his accusation written, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews," and just how throughout the crucifixion, how they made a blanket statement like that, just claiming the same thing he claimed, and how I did that to other people all the time, where I would just agree with what they were saying, but be mocking and slandering them in my mind and head the entire time. And just
well, what a blessing to know that God has changed every single one of you, and he's still working, right? When you think about, and we've just got a couple minutes left, but when you think about your walk right now, what is it that is the most important thing for you right now? I know this is a deeper question, but I'm just going to give you all an opportunity here. One last question.
This is where I raise my eyebrows.
There you go. The most important thing for you right now in seeing your walk go forward with Christ. I'll give you a second to think about that. And anybody want to start out right away? You know exactly what you want to say. The most important thing in light of going on for Christ, what is that thing that you need the most right now in your life? Go ahead.
So I don't like to read, period. So something that I'm trying to implement right now is just making sure I set aside that time and being more mindful of it. And so making sure that I have that time every single day is super important to me. And just being around believers and having them around me, because iron sharpens iron. So having that is so important.
All right, thank you. Good words that way. All right, who's next?
for me would be patience and waiting on the Lord instead of doing it in my own strength. But when I'm saying waiting on Him, pursuing that to where it's worked out.
So not doing it.
And not like halfway there and then go off and just move on and act like I care.
So you're really looking to Him to accomplish it while you're still doing your part.
Yeah.
Rather than just doing your part and saying, forget you, Lord, I'm just going to go ahead and do what I want to do. All right. Very good. All
So I heard something a couple Wednesday nights ago, and he was talking about loving people not because of who they are, but because God told you to. And I guess I just don't have a proper love for people in my life, and I want to have a proper love.
That's a huge thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because people, I mean, when I say people, we're really talking about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're not lovable.
No.
we just simply aren't.
I don't know about y'all, but I am.
Yeah, it's just we need to know each other a little bit more, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, there's certain things that we can love about each other, but then it's like, you really got to work hard at that, and so.
Well, it takes time and effort, and it really has. I think why it's so hard is because you would literally have to get yourself out of it. It can't be you.
Right.
It's not about you and your feelings.
That is so true. I was saying on Wednesday night, this last Wednesday night, I was saying that one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for the Lord about is that He can't stop loving me.
Exactly.
Just it won't happen, and I need that because I'm not lovable. So, all right, Becca, your last year.
I think just with like going forward more and over the past year, really struggling with, do I rejoice in seeing the will of God done, just with certain circumstances, and then also trusting that even being in prayer for His will to be done, and being completely surrendered and wanting to see that fulfilled.
Wow. You know, these are, I really appreciate these things. I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to listen to these things again because they're so huge. They're important for me in my life. And I can tell you tonight, as I listen to your testimonies, I am just very, very encouraged. And I really appreciate you taking time to be with me, to be with everybody that's online, and to give your testimonies out. And so I'm going to close up here. You know, we appreciate you being with us so much here tonight. God has been good to us, to me, as I've heard these testimonies. Hopefully you've been encouraged in that same way. And of course, this is something that we try to do here every Thursday night. Come back, hear some testimonies, and appreciate your comments, appreciate your feedback on some of these things that way as you've heard their testimonies. What a blessing in that way. We're going to close up here tonight. Appreciate your being with us. If you're up to it, you join me tomorrow, 6:40 in the morning. Yes, I know that's early, but we're going to finish up a series that we've been on this week, 6:40 tomorrow morning, on what is your why? What is your reason why you do what you do? We're going to finish that up tomorrow morning. And then, of course, next Thursday night, we'll be right back here, and we'll have a group of men, and we'll be listening to their testimonies. I'll tell you more about that during next week. Until then, you have a great night, and excuse me while I get up and shut my camera off, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for joining us.